Hello again, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Pigskin Preview. David Johnson will be along in just a little bit. We'll talk about the big ball games coming up this Friday night that concern Walton County teams. First of all, I want to talk to a familiar face around Walton County for a lot of years. This, of course, is Coach Tommy Stringer, the athletic director at Loganville High School. Coach, you're also on the committee of the Georgia High School Association that is in charge of reclassification. Can you clear up as far as what's been done to this point is in regard to reclassification?
Well, Danny, you know, your question is like a lot of others throughout the state. I mean, you know, from north, south, east, west, it's a hot topic right now. But I think the big significant change right now has been going from 5 classifications to 6 classifications. And that's probably the only definite that's out there right now. You know, we're waiting on FTE numbers from the State Department to determine where schools will be placed in which classification, whether it be the top classification of 6A or the lower classification of A. And of course, you know, the last 2 or 3 reclassification cycles, we've had hard numbers at the top and hard numbers at the bottom. By that I mean, you know, 1850 and 1900 was the top numbers. If you were above those numbers, you fell in the higher classification. In Class A, at 525, if you were below 525 student population, you were in Class A. So people have kind of gotten accustomed to those numbers. So everybody's calling now, want to know where they're going to fall. Well, nobody can tell them because we've gone from hard numbers back to true percentages like it was forever. And the percentages looks like are going to be between 15 and 17% in each classification. Understanding that Class A, because there's about 25 non-football playing schools in Class A, that percentage number will be a little bit higher to take in those 25 or 30 non-football playing schools that are in Class A. With that being said, you know, probably each classification will have 65 to 70 schools in those classifications, and you break that down into 8 regions, and you get you know, 8 to 10 teams in each region, which is ideal numbers because you can play a region schedule and not have to worry about subdividing and get into all this stuff about leaving the 10th week open to play in, like Monroe's in that situation now. Be the top team. I know last year in their situation, they were the top. They were the second seed team, and they had to go on the road, which doesn't seem fair. But you know, that's the way a lot of regions set it up, based on, you know, unbalanced teams on each side.
Well, is there any way that a school, and they're all smaller schools, I guess, towns, county, we're talking about in Hebron, that doesn't play a region schedule in football? Is that going to affect how they fall in other sports, or is everybody going to be treated alike?
No, if you choose to play non-region in football, and that's usually the only one that people choose to do that, and for a number of reasons, whatever their reasons might be of not playing a region schedule, that only affects football. All the rest of them, you know, basketball, baseball, track, and all those would compete in the region, and doesn't seem quite fair. And there's been some discussion about that. You know, if you choose not to play it in football, then you ought to be, you know, not be able to play it in the other sports as well. But right now, they think football is a numbers game. So as a result of that, you get some Class A schools, and not only Class A, but there's also some scattered throughout. You know, AA and AAA that don't play a region schedule simply because their numbers are down or whatever the situation might be.
When will we know for sure?
Well, you know, we thought this week we would get the numbers from the state on the FTE count. So we got the email from Dr. Swearingen yesterday saying it's going to be at least next week. And just talking with several systems throughout the state yesterday and today, you know, it may be the second week in November before we get the numbers. And then, of course, they've got a 10-day period of time to, you know, adjust their numbers or challenge the numbers if they think they're too high, too low, or whatever. And then, you know, so we're talking about another a week or two. So we're probably looking at around Thanksgiving, somewhere in that neighborhood I would say the first playoff week would probably be the time.
All right, the rumor we're hearing is this possibility that Loganville, Social Circle, and Monroe are going to end up in the same region.
Walnut Grove, you mean?
Oh, Walnut Grove, yeah. Social Circle, we've heard going up to AA, but maybe.
Yeah, nobody knows where those numbers are going to fall.
Yeah.
You know, you can take those numbers and project them based on last spring's FTE count, because right now nobody knows, you know, what the fall FTE count actually is. Everything's being projected off of last spring's count, which in most cases is low, because you lose kids. You usually start the school year off with a higher student population than you do at the end of the year. So, you know, the fall number, the spring number should have been low, and the fall number should have been a little bit higher. As far as all of us being in the same region, I think that'd be great, but, you know, I don't know. Our numbers are about 1150. I talked to the Walnut Grove, I talked to Coach Evans yesterday, and their numbers are somewhere in there, 1060, somewhere in there, and I think Monroe's are somewhere in there, you know, 950 to 975, somewhere in there. So, you know, there's within, you know, a couple hundred students there. So the likelihood of all of us being in there is probably not going to happen, but 2 out of 3 probably will be in the same region.
All right, obviously we could go on with this for the next 10 minutes, but we got to stop and talk about this week's football games. You got a big one against Habersham, and in about 30 seconds, you got to win it.
Well, we're in that situation now. You know, I think the Salem ball game, we lost the Salem ball game. You know, it put, you know, us in a situation where we were going to come down to the Habersham game and the Appalachia game to have to win both of those games, because I think somebody's going to be 6-4. I think, and 6-4 is going to get you in. 5-5 probably won't. You know, there's been a lot of stuff thrown around, you know, about 5 teams wind up 5-5 and what happens. But, you know, I really think some team's going to wind up 6-4, and I just hope it's us. I think we got that chance to do that. It's, you know, I think we can move the ball and score. The question is, can we stop?
Right. Okay. Game time for Loganville, 7:30 on Friday night at home. All right, now we're going to join David Johnson, talk about the rest of the county this week. David, we were just talking to Coach Stringer. He was saying that he thought Loganville would be able to move the football against Habersham, but can they stop them? And that's going to be the thing. It may take 40 points.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be a 49-48 job, no doubt about it. You know, Habersham has pretty much nothing on defense, but they have everything on offense. They've got that Kevin Ellison at quarterback, who has really just come out of nowhere this year and is suddenly on the radar of colleges all over the place. You know, last week he had, I think, 227 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, 227 yards rushing, 177 yards passing. He's just unstoppable. So yeah, that's going to be a real challenge for Loganville. You know, they got a path to the playoffs, but they got 2 pretty rugged games to get through to get there.
They really do. And fans, I tell you something, if you're coming to the ball game and you're going to sit on Loganville's side, get there early, because you talk about a setup. The Habersham Central radio crew. Have you ever seen those guys?
Yeah.
Oh man, there must be 10 of them. They do pregame, they do postgame. They have a computer in the booth that keeps up with stats. They have interviews during the ball game, a sideline reporter. They do it up. I guarantee you there's no other high school football team that's covered like Habersham Central. So they're going to take up a lot of space. So get there early and get your reserve seats.
Mention their band. They got a pretty big band too. So
do
they're going to take up a lot of room.
All right, now, so that one starts at 7:30 as usual. George Waltham's back at home this week against Commerce, and we used to Commerce being on top of the region. Not so without Steve Savage right now.
Yeah, they've struggled. This used to be the dominant team in Region 8A. In fact, it's funny, I was looking back, they are one of, over the past 12 years, Buford's lost 8 games, and Commerce actually has a win over them in the state championship back in 2000. But yeah, Commerce used to be that dominant team, and it's not like they're bad now. They're still probably going to make the playoffs this year for the 15th straight year. So they're not bad, just not as dominant as they used to. They haven't won the region in about 7 or 8 years. So yeah, not quite the same Commerce team we're used to, but still could be a pretty good game.
wonder how you explain that. It's not the first time it's happened where there seems to be a shortage of talent. I don't know if that's the case in Commerce or not. They're only a 1A team, but like I said, they hadn't been as consistent as usual.
Yeah, they clearly, I saw them last year for the first time in a while, clearly don't have the talent base that they used to. But of course that comes and goes. You know, you bring in a couple of guys, you turn that around in a hurry. So, but yeah, right now they just simply don't have the talent they used to.
Especially at 1A, one football player can make such a difference. How's George Walton looking to you right now?
They are about what we expected. They're strong on the line. They're a solid team. They just don't have that breakaway speed like they did the past couple of years when they were just really had solid teams. And of course last year when they made it to the second round of state, they had those two breakaway back there, Dobbs, Justin Brown, that could take it to the house on any play. Right now they just really don't have that back. Quarterback Hunter Rice looks really solid. He's a good quarterback, and he's just a junior. They've got a big line. It was funny last week, seeing them against Social Circle. You could tell they were just big. But they just don't have that breakaway player. So it's one of those, kind of like we said earlier in the year, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, grinded out kind of games for them this year.
All right, Monroe's going to be on the road at Johnson, a football team that hadn't won a ball game, and I was talking about Monroe last week playing against West Hall, a team that had struggled, and for a half it was nothing. Then all of a sudden Monroe scores 34 unanswered points. Against Johnson, they can probably afford to do that again this week, but don't really need to. No,
to me this week, and you don't want to take, every game's important. Frankly, Monroe just needs to not get anybody hurt this week. To me, if I'm Coach Flegg, I wouldn't say this, but who cares if you win this one or not? They should take care of it. But they're in the playoffs. They're not in the playoffs. They're in the play-in game to get in the playoffs next week. They'll probably end up playing North Hall. So they're already there where they want to be. They just need to make sure they don't get anybody hurt heading into that game.
North Hall, I saw them play Walnut Grove a month or so ago, and they were impressive that night. They got some really big backs, but I guess we can talk about that next week as Monroe area gets ready for them. A couple of teams that season's just about over. Oconee County is going to be at Walnut Grove this week. Oconee, do they have a chance to get in?
Yeah, they still have a chance. So this is what Walnut Grove's what they do have left to play for is they can actually they're not going to get in the playoffs, but they can have a say as far as who gets in. If they can beat Oconee County, they have a chance to knock the Warriors. Of course, battle the Warriors this week, but the Oconee County Warriors out of the playoffs. So I guess if you want to play spoiler, this would be a good week for that for Walnut Grove.
And the same for Social Circle. They'll be, they're not spoilers. They're playing out of the region against River Ridge. But River Ridge with the 6-2 record, but again, they're not playing an 8A, so you don't really know what that 6-2 means.
Yeah, I think this is probably Social Circle's last chance to get a win on the field. Of course, they got that forfeit win from Athens Christian last week. But the team I saw last week, the Social Circle, is the team I saw last week against George Walton. For all the dire coverage and things we've said about them all year, they really looked okay. They're young, but I think they've got some hope for the future. They put together some nice drives against George Walton. They really held George Walton down for a while in that first half. You got Ryan Fitzgerald, freshman at quarterback, who, if he can survive the year, he's really taking a pounding. But I think they've got some hope for the future, and I hope this week they might actually could pick up their first win.
All right, that's going to do it. Go after a high school football game on Friday night. David and I will see you next week.